Good evening, everyone. Hello, Master Peace, once again.
Hey, glad to be here.
I hope you're doing well, and I hope everyone that's joining us at this time online is having a great day. We're getting a lot of rain here. Matter of fact, we're under a flood watch.
Ooh,
We've always got some weird thing going on with weather here lately. It's snow, and my kids were out of school for a lot for snow there for a while, and then they went to school, and like after 2 days they got out for a whole week for like sickness, like too many sick people
oh
in the
wow,
county.
that's
So
crazy.
and now we're under a flood watch. So anyways, good times. How have you been, Masterpiece?
I'm hanging in there. I'm doing pretty well.
Fantastic. I'm just checking in with our chat here. We've got a few folks on with us already. Everyone is stoked to see Masterpiece. So I can only say I agree, everyone there. All right, yes. So this Mormon Satan person, I'm not sure who that is, but the name is is awesome. Do you know who that is, Masterpiece?
No, no.
I've seen them around. That's hilarious, though. I think I said, "Where are you from?" I think, and then I saw it was from Utah, but I was like, "Don't tell me hell. I don't want to, I don't want to hear that." Okay, so want to continue to welcome everyone in the chat. Let's see. Peter says flooding here in northern Australia. Meanwhile, it's 112 here in the south. That is so wild. 112 and then flooding up north.
Yeah, it's like 6 or 7 degrees here right now.
I'm not sure what the temp is. It's not real cold, but it's super rainy. Happy Taco Tuesday, Mike says. Man, that sounds good. So we want, as we go through the night tonight, Masterpiece and I wanted to invite anyone to chime in if we're overlooking your favorite story. But the thought or the theme of tonight was it just so happened, aka convenient revelations. So this topic, Masterpiece, it's kind of been floating around in my mind for a little while. I usually try my material out with my wife, and I'll be like, you know what I was thinking? And she's like, here we go again, you know? And so the other day I was kind of talking about this, and I felt like I was kind of falling flat, like I couldn't explain myself, and I needed to give it a little more thought. So what did I do? I thought about it more, and I called in some backup. So I got Masterpiece in here. So I think this is going to be fun. Before we get going, I was thinking that there could be lots of different titles for this episode. Of course, it just so happened would be one. Convenient revelations could be another. I thought about, what a coinky dink. That one could have worked. You would not believe how many times I had to spell that until I finally got. Did you mean this? I had no idea how to spell that.
Can't believe autocorrect didn't just come right up with that.
Well, I was I was way out there. I didn't know how to spell. Okay. I thought that would work. Another one I thought sounds a bit sus. Do you know what that means, Masterpiece?
Oh yeah, that sounds like something my son would say.
Yeah. So we look, we got Culch up in the chat. Shannon, BK, hello everyone. So so we were joking around with some friends the other day. Our kids are in two different parts of the country. So ours are here in the South, and theirs were in Florida. But the kids, it seemed like they had the same lingo. All these words that we probably don't know. And matter of fact, Ron, I hit up Google for some of the kids' latest hottest and greatest lingo. Let's see what other of these slang words you know while we're talking slang just for a second. So, do all of these look familiar to you, Ron, and your kids?
Yeah.
We got drip. Here's my drip tonight. What are you dripping on there, Masterpiece?
I just got my
No,
water.
that's not your drip. That's not your drip. Your drip's your
dang it.
outfit.
Oh, shoot. Oh, sorry, wrong drip.
Okay, your drip
This is
is
my
your
outfit.
outfit.
All right.
Yes. Let's see
I
what
should've
else we
looked at the
have.
definition before I pulled that up.
Yeah, let's see. Your cap, so if your cap, you're making a false statement. So they'll be like, "Oh, that's cap." Have you heard that before?
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeet. This is probably my favorite word. Well, favorite one. If you yeet something, you throw it out, or you kick it out. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
Because I feel like my kids, I'm like, you guys are just making this crap up. But I definitely thought yeet was my favorite. Riz. I'm not sure about Riz. Yeah. Mormonism is cap. Yes, Mormonism is cap. All right. So
Joseph Smith had some serious riz.
he had some riz. Oh, some charisma. Yeah, Joseph Smith had some riz. He was flexing on everyone. Let's see. Bet is not the bet that I think of. But he was definitely bussing. Oh, he yeeted. Who did Joseph yeet out of church? He yeeted
Three witnesses.
Oliver Cowdery. So, anyways, I was just thinking, yeah, those fun stuff there. But we'll get into our actual topic. Peter says, slang, that's all we speak down here. What is some Aussie slang, Peter? You're going to have to give us some of that Aussie slang.
For some fun, everyone who hasn't seen it, go check out like a Gen Z courtroom scene. And it's just the whole courtroom scene is them using these terms to describe a court case. So it's a lot of fun.
Shannon says, bet confuses me. Yeah, I wasn't sure how to use that one. I've heard my kids, you'll be saying something, and they'll be like, bet. But they're not saying, like, do you want to bet? So I don't know. Anyways, moving on. We've talked enough about that. So it just so happened. So my thought process with this, Ron, is I want to come at this as a true believing member would. In other words, like, we believed that if we knew about this stuff, and maybe some of the stuff we didn't know about, but if we did know about it, I'll speak for myself. I believed it, right? Like, they said it, I believed it. I don't remember ever questioning this stuff. What about you, Ron? I mean, did some of these that's like, I don't know, that's awfully convenient.
Yeah. Some of them I might have questioned a little bit, but mostly I just kind of went along with it. Like, just God could have just arranged things that way, and he just moved Joseph Smith just the right place, the right time to, like, I've read things like, oh yeah, God had to sent this cold weather and had these crop failures to move the Smith family exactly where he needs to be. So this is how God manipulated things to get Joseph there in the right place and all this other stuff. But it just seems awfully convenient.
Right. So what you're kind of describing was my mindset. Like, I always pictured like God being very involved in everything, especially restoration wise, right? Like, oh, got to send the seagulls and got to send the Mormon crickets in now, and just like micromanaging this situation. That's kind of the way that I always took it, and so I never questioned these things that just so happened to be, or that kind of seemed very convenient.
Yeah.
So with that, we're going to go through some, and as we get going, if anyone in the chat is, wants to bring something up, we'll be watching for that. So the first one for me, I feel like this is kind of the biggest convenient, it just so happened thing for me. So that would be how, now, before we get into this, I've always believed, and I've always, I guess, been taught that the Joseph Smith translation was Joseph restoring things that had been lost or taken out by evil people, essentially. I mean, is that pretty much?
Definitely. That's exactly how it was always pitched as.
So, we won't get into a bunch of Joseph Smith translation stuff. We know now that a large majority of it came from another source. But some of it, he was just straight. I guess someone will decide what he was doing. But this is in Genesis 50. And if someone checks their own, Holy Bible, Genesis only goes up to chapter 30 something, I think. So like he added lots of chapters, and we were supposed to believe that this stuff had just been taken out. And it gets to this point where, most people are familiar with this, but I'll go ahead and read it. And that seer will I bless, and they that seek to destroy him shall be confounded. For this promise I give unto you, for I will remember you from generation to generation, and his name shall be called Joseph, and it shall be after the name of his father, and he shall be like unto you, for the thing which the Lord shall bring forth by his hand shall bring my people unto salvation. So, the backstory is that this is speaking to Joseph of Egypt, right, Ron?
I think so.
And obviously what I'm getting at here is we claim, and I use we as a TVM, we claim that Joseph's name and his dad was in the Bible, and for some reason, somebody took it out. And I'm asking myself, why would someone take that out? Like, I know now with Mormonism that, we have lots of enemies, but like thousands of years ago when that would have been written, what would have been the reason at that point to take out this prophecy of a future Joseph and a future Joseph's dad, Joseph? It's just, and I remember thinking about this on my mission, and I even wrote it in my scriptures. I was looking for the exact set from my mission, and I couldn't find it. But I wrote in the margins, because I had a few people asking me, well, is Joseph in the Bible? When we would teach the first discussion, they would say, well, is Joseph Smith in the Bible? And I would think to myself, yes, actually he is, or at least he was, but someone took him out. So for me, I think I could end this episode right here and just say that is awfully convenient. And that is awfully, it just so happened that he was mentioned and his dad was mentioned. What do you think about that, Ron?
So one thing you'll notice is, and I watched your podcast the other day on the late war. You're commenting about how Jesus's name and his mother and everything was all known in the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon is very specific on prophecies that have already happened and very generic on things that would happen in the future.
Right.
So this is something that falls right in there. It's very specific on something that had already happened.
Yeah, I agree, Ron, and I agree, Shannon. I agree that it is. It's tough to do that. I never questioned it. I guess I don't know why I didn't, but I didn't. So I was just seeing if I missed anything in the chat there, but looks like that pretty well covers that. Should we go to the next slide, Ron?
Yep.
All right. Tell us about this.
This is one of my favorite stories. When people were talking about Chad Daybell and some of his awfully convenient revelations, like, oh, he wasn't a real prophet. Listen to some of these very convenient things, revelations he had about, oh, someone marrying him, or how he knew that Lori Daybell was his wife in a previous lifetime, or they lived all these other very convenient stories. I'm like, yeah, well, Joseph Smith had a lot of these too. And this is the first one that comes to my mind. The graphic on the right this is one of the first cartoon history things that I did a couple months ago in December. But this is a story where Joseph Smith wants to marry Lydia Moon, and William Clayton is already married to Margaret Moon, and I've forgotten the other wife. But he's married two sisters. One of them was just recently. Margaret was a recent one, and she's been having a hard time with the polygamy thing. But William wants to marry Lydia as well.
So that would be the third sister.
That would be the third sister. And so here's William Clayton's journal, September 15th, 1843. President Joseph Smith told me he had lately had a new item of law revealed to him in relation to myself. He said the Lord had revealed to him that a man could only take two of a family, except by express revelation, probably by if he needed any exceptions. As I had said, I intended to take Lydia. He made this known for my benefit. To have more than two in a family was apt to cause wrangling and trouble. He finally asked if I would not give Lydia to him, and I said I would, so far as I had anything to do in it. He requested me to talk to her. So Joseph not only wants to hijack William's attempt at another wife, he wants William to be his wingman for it. So I got a couple of other journal entries about his attempts. September 17th, 2 days later, I had some talk with Lydia. She seems to receive it kindly, probably the idea of polygamy, but says that she has promised her mother not to marry while her mother lives, and she thinks she won't. And then September 21st, tries again, this AM. He came to talk with Lydia, but she won't consent. She wants to tarry with her sisters. So Joseph tried to get in on the Lydia action, but she wouldn't have it.
So, okay, so just to make sure I understand, who was it that was already married to
William Clayton?
William Clayton was married to two sisters, and he wanted to take the third, and then Joseph said he got a revelation that you can only have two, and that he would like to go ahead that he needed to go ahead and take the other one. And the one Joseph wanted, I think, was the youngest, right?
I'm not sure the order. I think she might have been married. As I was reading up, it looked like she might have been married once before, and he died, so she might have been a widow. But I'd have to double check on the actual order of things.
I do remember studying this story, and I thought that I recall that because I thought how convenient she happened to be the youngest. But anyways,
it might have been. There's a lot of Lydias in the family. There's like the mother might have been Lydia, and so I was trying to keep who was who straight in the journal that he had.
Well, regardless, it was by express revelation. What's an express revelation? Is that kind of like a convenient revelation?
It's like a revelation that comes on the expressway. It just kind of comes off the cuff. It's like an urgent message.
Okay, I agree, Shannon. Yeah, that's a little ick. Got a little factory comment there from Mark. All right, let's go on. Those two seem quite convenient. Okay, so this is me and my family when we went up north to visit some church sites. You see me there with my flip-flops, my family. Of course, we're at the Noel K. Whitney store. Have you ever been up in Palmyra and all the church sites up there, Ron?
I've been to a lot of church sites. I've been to like Kirtland, Palmyra, and Nauvoo and everything. I don't think I've been to the Newell K. Whitney site. This looks like Kirtland.
Okay.
But
Well,
I've been,
anyways,
I haven't
this
been
was one of our trips. Now, do you know what this is, Ron?
that's the Hill Cumorah pageant.
Yeah. So this is the Hill Cumorah pageant. Now, I have been, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 times with my own family, and maybe once or a couple times. I think we went once with like our church group or our youth group or our seminary group. So, I've been up there a few times. Did you ever see the pageant? Did you see the pageant, Ron?
I went there with my daughters for a youth activity. I got permission to take photographs, and I got some really good pictures of like the explosions and stuff in the background with the kids flying from the various steps. So I've got some fun pictures.
Okay, I should have asked you for some of those. But anyway, so this is the set. I'll just say that this was a great time. We enjoyed it. I will say that it's kind of like you kind of feel pressure as a parent to like, oh, we could go to Disney, whatever, or we could go to the church sites. And, we definitely felt pressure. So anyways, that's the Hill Cumorah pageant. This is one of my sons, and I think that's King Noah, I think. Interesting here, you'll see that the sign says that you will feel the spirit at this historic site. And historic, I think, is an interesting word, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. So the Hill Cumorah, I feel like this whole thing. Now, we only have a couple minutes to talk about this now. There's entire episodes that cover this, especially on Mormonism Live and other places. No, Susie, they don't do the pageant anymore. They stopped. What's it been, like 10 years ago or more now? Probably more.
Nelson killed it, so it's been since 2018. I think the last one was probably supposed to be during COVID, but it was canceled because of COVID. So it was probably like 2019 might have been the last one.
Oh, wow. Okay. Less than 10 years. All right. So anyways, what we have been told now, I'm not going to get into the 2 Hill Cumorah. There's a theory out there now that is called the 2 Hills Cumorah theory. And the reason that theory exists is because the actual Hill Cumorah that we have always been taught, which was conveniently right down the street from, Joseph's house. Just thinking about the logistics of that, like that Joseph's family had to end up where they were, and then going back to kind of that whole like God playing chess, and I need to move them here, and because there's a book in the ground, and you know what I mean? This is suggesting that God is very much controlling this situation. At least it did to me. So not only was the Hill Cumorah supposedly the hill that the great Nephite and Lamanite battle, where I don't even remember how many people were killed.
Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, just loads and loads of death. But it was also the very same hill that we find of the hill Ramah, they called it in the book of Ether, where they had a great battle and another great number of people were killed. Right, Ron?
That's absolutely right. But if you go there, there's no strategic advantage would bring 2 great civilizations to have a great Armageddon battle on this hill. There's no resources there. There's nothing there that would drive everybody to conglomerate to this one spot to get them to do this battle. So the whole idea, the whole premise is just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So you look at this picture, like this is it. This is the hill. And like you just said, not only does it not work from a strategic, idea, they've dug it. there have been many people who have done archaeological digs, and it has been pronounced a clean site, I think was the wording, in that they found nothing. No bones, no steel, no chariots, no anything. So I just thinking about this whole story and how convenient that both of these hills were right down the street from Joseph's house, and the final battle and whatever, and then Moroni puts the plates in the ground, and at the when they did this, this was like a what do they call it? They were dedicating the site, and they were placing like statues and different stuff. I was reading through the talks and stuff, and one of them was like, this is the land, Moroni walked on, and he saw his people being, being hunted or whatever. And now he'll be able to see his people, living in peace. This kind of thing. It's like they definitely believe that this was the hill, So anyways, to me, the whole story is just ultra, super convenient. It's like it just so happened that all of this took place right down the street. So before we move on, I have to say, Peter, come on, man. Those are flip-flops. Those are not thongs. I'll show you what a thong is later, but yeah, those were flip-flops. All right, so let's move on. This one's you, Ron.
Yeah, so Joseph has a history of like getting people to build things and give him things. So his house in Kirtland was given to him. I can't remember. I couldn't find a source for what he did to get them to build him a house in Kirtland. I'm sure I came across it before, but I couldn't find it in time for this. So I went with the mansion that he got a revelation that people needed to build him a revelation. Or to build him
a mansion.
So here we have a D&C 124. Again, I say, verily, verily I say unto you, if my servant Robert D. Foster will obey my voice, let him build a house for my servant Joseph according to the contract which he has made with him, as the door shall be opened to him from time to time. And let him repent of all his folly and clothe himself with charity and cease to do evil and lay aside all his hard speeches. But yeah, it's just kind of like, here's this revelation. You need to build me a house, and then it'll be a really nice place. I can make some income from it by renting out the rooms. So it's not just a big mansion, but it's also a hotel that they've added onto the back of the house. So he's got lots of cool stuff coming from this by just getting a revelation to tell people to build him something.
You know what? I think my wife got that same revelation. To build her a mansion. I mean, I've been building on this thing for 2 years. It's definitely not a mansion, but I've been building on it for 2 years. Let me say, hey, Colby, thanks for joining us today. I watched you with John today. I think that was live. Was that live, what I watched today? I think it was. You did great there with them. Thanks for being on here with us, bunch of randos. Peter says, only 600 more subs, Nathan. He's talking about my big party I had promised. All right. So, yeah, that's awfully convenient to get a revelation to tell other people to build you a house, right?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So let's see what else we have. Okay. So these two slides, let me just say this. When I heard about this from Bill Reel and RFM, this just floored me. Matter of fact, I started a TikTok. I was like, I want to talk about this. And I was like, where can I talk about this? I was like, I'm starting me a dang TikTok. I posted one video. That's it. One video. And I talked about this issue here, but this blew my mind. I feel like most of us maybe know this by now, but there's a lot of people who don't. And I definitely had never heard the connection here. So with that, in Mosiah 4, we read this, and it's kind of it's in an odd place if you read the whole chapter. Of course, this is King Benjamin, my favorite, speaking and preaching and all this good stuff. And all of a sudden, he gets really worried about telling people that if they borrow something, they need to make sure they bring it back. And so this is what the verse says, and I would that ye should remember that whosoever among you borroweth of his neighbor should return the thing that he borroweth according as he doth agree, or else thou shalt commit sin, and perhaps thou shalt cause thy neighbor to commit sin also. So it's just a kind of a weird verse. Taken at face value, I don't even see that it makes sense. Like, Ron, if I loan you a pipe, say that pipe you've got in your hand, and you don't give it back, like, how are you causing me to commit sin? I guess if I come and bust you over the head, maybe, that's, but it just doesn't make sense. And so now we know, thanks to, I just lost his name. Thanks to the scholarship of some great people, that the timeline of this revelation or this translation process correlated and corresponded to the time that Martin Harris would have been serving as scribe. So that's a long way to get around to saying Martin Harris would have been writing this down and hearing this. And what do we know about Martin Harris? That he borrowed the manuscript and hadn't returned it. And so this was kind of a way to say, nudge, nudge, hint, hint, I need that manuscript back. And then they stopped translating. So when I found this out, that it was Dan Vogel who had showed how they showed that Martin Harris was the scribe for this. I can't show that to you all right now, but you can go find Dan Vogel's work on that.
It's called the Mosiah Priority. I don't think Vogel wrote it first, and I'm spacing it on the name of the person who did. And
I know who you're talking about, because I listened to the he was the one that was friends with the guy that blew people up.
Yeah.
Anyways,
yeah, he was a security guard for the church back in
the
80s and 90s.
Someone will correct us on the name there.
Yeah, I'm spacing
regardless, between Dan, I think Dan still had something to do with it, and him. They showed how Martin Harris would have most likely been the one. And the point is that this was a nudge to get him, in my view, now a very convenient verse to get him to return the lost manuscript. Now, Mark Hoffman, thank you. Yeah, of course.
Mark Hoffman was
Mark Hoffman was the one that the other guy was working with.
Forger. Yeah, the scholar was friends with Mark Hoffman.
Yeah, he was the one he was the security. He was the security guard for
the church.
Yeah, can't think of his name, but he's very well known. At any rate, the next piece is similar to this, and that's in Mosiah 3. And in here, from this same Mosiah priority situation, we are told that this was most likely Emma who was scribing for Joseph. And this was interesting because she and Joseph had just recently lost a baby. And, this story actually really pulls at my heartstrings, because to me, this shows a very loving and comforting side of Joseph. We like to pick on him for lots of reasons, but to me, this shows a loving side. And once again, Brent Metcalf, thank you, Coach. I kept spacing the name. It's hard when you see the ticker rolling and it says live 34 minutes. It's like crap. But yeah, thank you. So the point is here that Joseph and Emma had just lost a baby, and I know how that feels. I know how my wife felt when we went through that. And if there was something that I could have done to console my wife and my family during that, I would have done it. And I feel like Joseph did that. Emma was scribing, and if you read this verse, again, it sticks out like a sore thumb, but it talks about the infant that perisheth not, that dieth in his infancy. And it goes on to kind of talk about how we need to become as little children and stuff like that. So it's just two verses that Brent Metcalf and Dan Vogel show would correspond to Emma and Martin Harris, and that just so happened to speak to things that they were dealing with at the time. Did I explain myself well enough, Ron?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. Those were extremely convenient, and it really was surprising that it just so happened to work out that way. Okay. Well, I'll start on this one, Ron. I just wanted to point out it's really the last couple words there. Of course, this is what we see in the book of Abraham. And we know, most of us know how this came about with the papyri. Or, anyways, the point I wanted to bring out was written by his own hand. And you just think, just logically thinking about this, how long ago would Abraham have lived? Would we say like
It was,
from
I think it was
now?
close to 2000 BC or something like that.
So like 4,000 years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
Just thinking about even when Joseph, so he would have been referring to something 3,800 years prior, and he comes across this thing, and he's like, this was written by the hand of Abraham. To me, I think of something like this. It's like, like I got the golden ticket, right? It's like, Willy Wonka, that was a one in whatever chance. But for Joseph, he come across this mummy and this thing, and he's like, boom, this is the hand of Abraham. And that part alone, to me, is just like, well, how convenient.
And the other one was from the hand of Joseph. So we got Abraham's and Joseph's scrolls.
Oh, we had both of them. That's right. Yeah. I mean, it's embarrassing. I'm just going to say it's embarrassing that I bought that hook, line, and sinker, that the very thing that someone was coming along and they sold, the mummies that had the scrolls and stuff, just so happened to conveniently be by coinkydink. And it seems awfully sus that it was Abraham. So why don't you take it from there, Ron?
So I've been looking at some of the things from Joseph Smith for another post that I had done a little bit further back. And Joseph, when he's talking about how he acquired these scrolls, he talks about them as if they were gifts, or somebody just kind of, Chandler came to town with the mummies, and then everyone just kind of pitched in like, oh, we need to give this to Joseph Smith because this will be such a great thing for him. So in the Millennial Star, it's written as an event of a nature so extraordinary, and was of course so soon noised abroad, when a number of gentlemen in the neighborhood, not connected with the saints, united together and purchasing the record together with some or all of the mummies, made Mr. Smith a present of them. So he's saying that, hey, even some people that aren't even members just kind of thought, hey, this needs to be given to Joseph. We'll buy this. This thing costs over like $2,400. Mm-hmm. And in those times, that's, I think, equivalent to like $80,000 is what I read.
Wow. So
here they're saying that some people just kind of happened to just get together and buy this for Joseph. In the history of the church, Joseph mentions this as soon after his preaching, some of the saints at Kirtland purchased the mummies and papyrus, a description of which will appear hereafter. And so Joseph has these scrolls, and he's charging people to come in and see him. He's got them kind of on display, and his mom will often show them off. So he's giving her some source of income. He gives her a job of kind of showing off these things. But it turns out it wasn't quite that's how it happened. So Joseph had met with Chandler. They paid Chandler to see the scrolls and the mummies. and he wanted to really just buy the scrolls, but Chandler said it was a package deal. And so he arranges to get some people together to purchase it. He goes in. Joseph Smith pays for a third. We're supposed to pay for a third. We've got Joseph Coe and one other person. And they're supposed to go together and purchase this for him. And in 1844, Joseph Coe still hasn't been paid back and writes a letter to Joseph Smith. And here's what he says. When the subject of purchasing that concern came up, I was somewhat involved and unable to sustain a heavier burden than in any great length of time. So he couldn't float this kind of money forever. So it's supposed to be a short-term loan, but having all the confidence in the utility of the collection and being assured by yourself, he's talking to Joseph here, Joseph Smith, being assured by yourself that the burden would be but temporary, that the profits arising from the work when translated would be more than adequate to defraying all the expense which might accrue by the purchase. I therefore managed the business in relation to the purchase with the same confidence that I had previously done business with, which I thought would result in the good of the church. Previous to closing the contract with Michael Chandler, I made arrangements with Simon Andrews to take 1/3 part, yourself and company 1/3, leaving 1/3 to be borne by myself. Andrews paid his $800. I took $800 out of a bank, which paid a large portion of my share. But yours with the interest still hadn't been paid, still remained until spring of 1836, if I mistake not, when an arrangement with Chandler, and he agreed to take $1,000 and give up my notes. So Joseph never even paid his portion of it, it looks like, and Joseph Coe had to fork up enough to pay Chandler the amount that he was owed.
Wow. Never heard all that. But
yeah.
And then Joseph turns around and tells people that it was a gift?
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Like, oh, these people just kind of came forward and made a gift of this to me, and it was so great. It makes it look like a lot less happens. But this part here where he says that he's convincing Joseph Coe to do this is like, hey, this is an investment. We'll translate it, and we'll make a whole bunch of money from selling the translation, and you'll get all this money back and everything. So it'll be very short loan.
Okay, well, I see how that ends up being a little sus. How about this one?
It follows the same pattern with Martin Harris, and we hear the story about Martin Harris selling his farm for the Book of Mormon printing. It wasn't necessarily supposed to be that way. He was willing to put up the collateral to pay for it, but they're supposed to be able to sell the Book of Mormon at a profit. He's going to make some money on this whole deal, and so he's willing to do this, but he's gonna make money off of it, and it's not going to cost him this farm. So he's just kind of putting this down as security for the loan, but they'll make so much money selling the Book of Mormon when it's translated that you won't have to worry about it. So D&C 19, summer of 1829, they've just finished the translation of the Book of Mormon, and they're trying to get arrangements made for who's going to print it and how much it's going to cost. And he gets this revelation. And again, I command thee that thou shalt not covet thine own property, but impart it freely to the printing of the Book of Mormon, which contains the truth and the word of God. So here's another very convenient revelation. He's coveting his own property. What the hell is that?
Yeah, that's kind of hard to do. Yeah, so you need to, that's us. You need to be ready and willing at any given moment to give up your own property.
Yes. So, but then this is an affidavit from Lucy Harris in November 29th, 1833. She says this you can find this in the Hurlburt HB, the Mormonism Unveiled book, the big first anti-Mormon book that was published. But she says, whether Mormon religion be true or false, I leave the world to judge, for its effects on Martin Harris have been to make him more cross, turbulent, and abusive to me. His whole object was to make money out of it. I will give a proof of this. One day at Peter Harris's house, Abigail Harris's husband, I told him that he had better leave the company of the Smiths, as their religion was false. To this he replied, if you would let me alone, I could make money out of it. It is vain for the Mormon to deny these facts, as they are well known among most of his former neighbors. So Martin Harris thinks he's probably gotten some kind of promises from Joseph Smith that this is an investment, we'll make some money, you can be helped translate, and we'll make this whole Golden Bible story is so fantastic. These things will be selling like hotcakes, we'll be rich, type of thing. It turns out there was so much hubbub in the Palmyra area after it was printed. Everybody had made a commitment not to buy the Book of Mormon. So nobody in the area would buy it. And after the book was printed, Joseph's like, okay, here's all these books. You can sell these books and recoup your costs. You can sell enough until you make enough money to pay back the loan. He had the loan until spring of 1831. That was the pay date. So the Book of Mormon was printed 1830. Kind of the beginning of 1830, they had like a year to sell the books to pay back the loan. And if not, then he had to sell off his farm to do it. And he could not sell off the books in time, didn't get enough money, and he ended up selling his farm in 1831 to pay the debt. So he didn't mean to sell his farm to pay for the Book of Mormon printing. He was bullied into using it as collateral, and the sales were so abysmal that he just couldn't. He had to do it because he was stuck.
Is that about when they went to, was it Canada to sell the copyright of the Book of Mormon?
That was a few months before that. So that was going to be January 1831. So yeah, they were trying to do that, try to get some money in before it came time, and that didn't work out.
So Hallie, I think it's Hallie, Cram says, sorry, just joined. Are you going to talk about Isaac Morley?
I don't have anything on Isaac Morley, but I know he had the farm with the communal farm. And so Hallie, if you want to tell us what story you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I'm not sure if Hallie wants to do this, but if anyone feels like they have something to, you can either type it out. I don't know how long you can type in the chat here, but right there is the link if someone wants to come in for a minute or two and share some of your own stories that you feel like are just very convenient or very suspicious. But we have a few more, to do. Oh, it says Morley was my great grandfather. Joseph Smith bullied him to sell his farm. Okay, yeah. So I feel like I've heard some of that story, but not enough to talk about it. So
yeah, I can't tell it off the cuff of my head.
Yep. Okay, let's see where we are at. I think, I think this one's
it's
one's
also
you.
one of mine, but it follows a similar pattern. So someone in, I think in Mormonish posted this story. She'd gone to Weber State, and this was her bishop, and so she was kind of sharing this story. But so Mormon Utah is very well known for its affinity fraud, where you pose as someone who's in a very, you use your prestige and trust as a church leader to get people to invest in your businesses, and you'll make a lot of money. So this is a paragraph from that article. In November 2005, the man said Reed told him about Net Funds LLC, which had a business model purporting to offer large companies such as Walmart and Wells Fargo the service of handling and operating corporations' charitable giving operations. Reed told the man if he invested $50,000, he would have 1% ownership in the company, and even though he would have his money fully returned in a year, he would retain his ownership in the company according to court documents. Reed allegedly said similar companies sold for $100 million. So this is very similar to what Joseph Smith keeps doing. He's like, hey, yeah, invest in my Book of Mormon, invest in my Book of Abraham papyri, and we'll make so much money, and you'll get all your money back and everything, and don't worry about it. It'll all go great. And then it all falls through pretty bad. So this is just very similar, right there in line with how Joseph Smith operated. So he
Okay,
was
well,
following the prophet.
yeah, so that's interesting. You bring that up. It's not really the same thing, but I showed you that picture earlier of us at the Hilkamora pageant. Well, they had a booth set up there, and we were a young, financially struggling family. We still are. Maybe not so young, but financially struggling.
Yep.
And there was a booth set up of, there was this lady selling subscriptions to the Living Scriptures, account. And I don't remember how they were delivering it, if it was mail or a internet sign-in thing or whatever it was. They guilt tripped us, man. They basically said, you, in my opinion, they basically said you're a terrible parent if you're not going to sign up right here and now. And we went for it because we didn't want to be a terrible parent, and got on some monthly plan. I think as soon as we got home, I'm like, you're gonna have to cancel that. We can't afford that. But yeah, interesting. Okay, let's see what else we have here. Okay, so this is one of my favorite stories, and it's actually interesting. I put this clip on here because this is an LDS Living post. So LDS Living, I looked this up one time. I think they would say, I can't remember if it's specifically tied to the church or not, but regardless, it seems like they are one of the larger accounts of faithful members. So they are acknowledging in this publication that Joseph Smith's father saw the Tree of Life 19 years before the Book of Mormon was published. And the rest of the article goes on to explain how Joseph's mother, she says, I'm going to read from his account. So it was apparently written down. How could she read from it if it wasn't? And so it was written down. And, I've talked about this before, but to be brief, I think about like the way that my kids are when, like, here goes dad again. He's going to tell this story or that story, right? Like, well, Joseph was a storyteller. And where did he learn it? Probably learned it from his dad. But regardless, they didn't have a lot to do to have fun and to be entertained. So what would they do? They'd tell stories. And if Joseph Smith Sr. had a dream that was so vivid that he wrote it down, then you have to assume that he talked about it frequently, right? Let me tell you about this dream I had. And then all the kids would be, oh, here we go. Here goes Dad's dream. So you have to assume that Joseph heard this story many times. Okay. So now we put ourselves in Joseph's shoes, and he's sitting there translating with whoever, Oliver or whoever, and he gets to this story, and he's like, oh my gosh, you've got to be kidding me. And he's like, Oliver's like, what is it? What is it? He's like reading off this little rock, and he's like, you're not going to believe this. This is my dad's story. He would have been high-fiving and like, this is proof that it's true. And he would have spread it, shouted it from the rooftops. Like, this work has to be true because this story from Lehi and then later Nephi is the exact same dream my dad had. And if you haven't seen the similarities, it will blow you away. And so it's awfully convenient to me and awfully suspicious that Joseph Joseph Sr. had the same dream that Lehi and Nephi had, almost identical. And the suspicious thing is that there wasn't a big deal made out of it. Like, this is awesome. He had the same dream. This is proof. Like, that never happened. So then that's when the suspicious part enters in.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was neat that LDS Living was acknowledging, oh, this is cool, great.
They don't want to be accused of hiding things.
Oh, let's see here. Deanne says, I got to be in the pageant in 1983. Wow. Okay, that's cool. Living scriptures were sold everywhere, a scam. I'm glad I wasn't the only one. I'm glad we weren't the only suckers.
My kids know the scriptures really well because of that. They know all the stories.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They were good. They were good for that. All right. Let's see what else we have. It just so happened that what, Ron?
This was something that really confused me when I was a kid. So we're reading Doctrine and Covenants as a family home evening or something, and they're talking about Hiram Page, who's getting some revelations from a stone in a hat. And I thought, why the hell would anybody believe a revelation like that is coming from God or something? Why would they fall for this? Because this doesn't make any sense, which is just ridiculous. It turns out that's how Joseph Smith got all of his revelations and translated the Book of Mormon, but they didn't tell me that.
Let me stop you for a second. Where did you guys read about Hiram Page and the stone in the hat?
You got to read the chapter heading on D&C 28.
Okay.
So if you read the section heading, it talks about Hiram Page getting revelations from a black stone or something like that. I don't know I can't remember if it says the hat, but it does say for sure the stone.
Okay.
So
well Ted says Joseph knew Hiram Page wasn't getting revelations from God, so he quickly shut him down. How did he shut him down? Is that when he was like, oh, by the way, I'm the only one that can get revelations or something like that?
Yeah, so that's what this section from D&C 28 is.
Okay,
so,
yeah, that's because Joseph knew it was a fraud, so it's like, I know I'm pulling the wool over their eyes. So
he doesn't like competition.
All right, so you go ahead.
So Oliver Cowdery, I think Joseph might be in Harmony, Pennsylvania or something like that. And this is happening in Fayette, New York, where the Whitmers were living. So the Whitmers, Hiram Page marries into the Whitmer family. And so Hiram had a seer stone. These pictures here are David Whitmer and John Whitmer's stones. So I think two of these are David's and one is John's. So these people all had their own seer stones. And if you look, these look like ornamentation, jewelry, things that they dug up out of one of the mounds they stole from Indian graves. That you can see the holes in there that they might have used to put a string in there to hang them around their neck or something like that. So they're using these Indian ceremonial things as seer stones. But anyway, D&C 28. But behold, verily, verily, I say unto thee, no one shall be appointed to receive commandments and revelations in this church, excepting my servant Joseph Smith Jr., for he receiveth them even as Moses. And again, thou shalt take thy brother Hiram Page between him and thee alone, and tell him that the things which he hath written from that stone are not of me, and that Satan deceiveth him. For behold, these things have not been appointed unto him, neither shall anything be appointed unto any of this church contrary to the church covenants. So he's commanded, Oliver Cowdery has to go back to Fayette and tell Hiram that they have to destroy the revelations and his seer stone. And we think that based on what else was happening in this section, that talks about where Zion's going to be located. So I think Hiram Page's revelations was on the location of where the city of Zion was going to be. And so Joseph says in this section that it'll be revealed to you soon, and they have a conference, and then they declare that it's going to be in Missouri. But anyway, that's this whole story on someone trying to get revelation from a stone, and Joseph says, "Oh nope, sorry, only I get to do that."
So I like what Ted says. He says, this is still common. Any revelation that someone gets that contradicts what the church says, we're told is from Satan. And you're right. That's no one is allowed to contradict the brethren.
It wasn't even a contradiction; it was just additional stuff. Hey, I got some new information. This is where it's going to be, and so
No, good
Joseph
point.
didn't like someone else giving additional information.
I guess he could see that the who was it, Oakes gave that talk. Where will it lead? Right? I don't know if I gave a talk on it once. So where will it lead? Joseph can see where will this lead if he lets other people have claim revelations. So Kristen had said she was going to mention something. I'm not sure if she's going to post it, and I don't know how long it will let you post in that or not. But anyways, so we'll be watching for that if it comes through. Let's see what else we have on here. Oh yeah, this was just a little something I put in that so talking about the rocks, that it just so happened, or it's awfully suspicious, or it was very convenient that the very method to translate the plates was the exact same as Joseph's hobby of treasure hunting, which was simply a rock. So, just this whole topic, obviously, I never knew anything about it previously, but it's just all so convenient.
Joseph Smith is doing all this treasure digging. He's using his seer stone to try to locate treasure. The treasure is protected by spirit guardians, so they have to do magical circles and things, sacrificing animals, trying to appease the spirit guardian. And they have to do this like late at night, and they can't talk. It'll disrupt. It'll trigger the protections. Eventually, someone will do something wrong. The treasure will slip further away into hillside, and they lose their chance at the treasure. And then what happens? Joseph finds a golden plates protected by a spirit guardian, and he has to do everything just right to be able to get the plates. So Lucy Mack Smith talks about his first time going up. He's supposed to carry the plates. Once he picks them up, he's supposed to carry them all the way home and not put them down until he gets home, and put them in a box, a lock with a lock on it. But he pulls them out, and then he notices that there's probably some other stuff still in the box, and he wants to make sure it's safe. So he puts the plates down, covers the lid to make sure nobody else sees the stuff, and takes it. And then he looks back, and the plates are gone. They've slipped right back into the golden box, or into the stone box. He reaches in, tries to grab them, and it knocks him back. And he's triggered the spirit guardian. Moroni tells him that he can't get him until the next year. He has to bring Alvin or something. But this whole thing is like, it's very much all part of the gold treasure digging folklore. You have to follow everything precisely. You got the spirit guardians and everything, and the whole thing is all just part of treasure digging.
Which isn't very different from how things are in the church now. You have to say the baptismal prayer just right. You have to say the sacramental prayer just right. You have to take the lid off of the oil because blessings can't go through that little plasticky little liddy thing. Blessings can't go through that. So you have to take it off. Then you consecrate it. Then you can put your lid back on. So much has to be done just exactly right. Okay. Let's see what Kristen's saying here. Sorry, we couldn't. She was trying to post a link, but we couldn't open it. Basically, a woman whose husband becomes disabled prays for him to live. He does. Caring for him is hard. Then uses her faith and prayers to be willing to let him die. He doesn't. Puts him in care center. Okay. So she's just explaining how basically the prayers did work, I think. Prayers for him to live, he does. Caring for him is hard, then uses her faith and prayers to be willing to let him die. He does.
There's another part of it too.
Oh, okay. Then one of her husband's
Best friends.
best friends. I was trying to think, what is that, boyfriend? And her start dating. Now she's praying for guys that she can divorce them. Oh, wow. Yeah. So there's lots to that story. I see. Okay. And appreciate you sharing that. So let me go on to this next one that I have here, Ron. So this is something that I've talked about a few times. Once again, LDS Living posted it, and I find it very, very surprising that LDS Living is willing to admit this. Because before I get into this, Ron, have you ever, prior to being Master Peace, had you ever heard of anyone, say in the 1800s, of seeing God, seeing Jesus, all this stuff? No, we were told that this whole first vision scenario was a singular event, right? That it was that all of heaven and earth hinged on this one moment. And that's the way that, and then we sing the song, oh, how lovely was this particular morning, and bees were and birds and all this, birds and bees, and everything was going on just right. So this one fantastical, hinge pin of a moment could take place. Well, unfortunately, LDS Living acknowledges that at least 20 people besides Joseph Smith saw God and or Christ as a man, and a majority reported that the vision came in response to a prayer. And one of those people's name is Norris Stearns. And if you go and pull up Norris's account, and I've done this on previous episodes, but it reads exactly like Joseph's. It talks about a pillar of light and, brighter than the sun, and it descended gradually, all of the stuff.
Yeah,
And
it's
so,
really bad.
so to me, there's a few thoughts on this. Number one, we were always led to believe that Joseph was persecuted from his claim of seeing God and things like that. Well, to me, no, he wasn't. Like, everyone was claiming that. At least 20 people, according to LDS Living, claimed to see God. And that is in like the 1800s. I'm not talking, biblical times. That's like contemporary sources of Joseph's time. All of them before him, by the way. I don't know anyone that came after, but all of those 20, or at least there was many that were the main ones that were before. So I find it awfully convenient, and it just so happened that Joseph claimed, like the grandest event that happened to Joseph, he claimed that LDS Living agrees happened to at least 20 other people. That's where I was sort of trying to go with that. I think this next one I had also in there. This is a screen grab from LDS discussions with John DeLynn and Mike, and I think maybe Nemo was in this day. But this was very interesting. So you wonder where the names Laman and Lemuel may have come from? Well, Luman Walters was one of Joseph's treasure digging friends. And he went by, his name was Luman, but he went by Laman. And you can see right here, there's a something written up that is referring to him as Laman. So, kind of one of these deals where you kind of have a name that's pronounced different ways. So he went by Laman a lot, Laman Walters. Well, he had an uncle named Lemuel Walters, and these are treasure hunting buddies who founded Burke, Vermont. And then Lemuel had a son named Samuel. So, I just I thought that was so interesting and so convenient that he just happened to have friends who happened to have the same name as some of the most famous people from the Book of Mormon. So
There's a Lemuel Durfee who was the landlord. He took over the Smiths farm when they fell behind on their payments. So that was a person they weren't happy about that took over the farm. And that was another thing that kind of comes from that one as well. So like, hey, here's a guy I don't like. He's a bad guy. We'll make him the bad guy in my story here. So that's another place where I think Lemuel might have come from.
this is Kristen finishing her thought, and I see what you're saying now. She says revelations were real when it was really her mind giving her when it was really her mind giving her the answer she wants, till she doesn't. Not so convenient, if you ask me. Absolutely. All right, so that was something interesting on Layman, Lemuel, and Samuel, and interesting what you shared there, Ron. Take us through this one.
So this was a revelation. The first one I think is probably from 1829. Is found in the Book of Commandments. So says, and now behold, this I shall say unto him, I am the Lord, I the Lord am God. I have given these things unto my servant Joseph, and I have commanded him that he should stand as a witness of these things. Nevertheless, I have caused him that he should enter into a covenant with me, that he should not show them except I command him, and he has no power over them except I grant it unto him. So he's talking about being able to show the gold plates to people. And he has a gift to translate the book, and I have commanded him that he shall pretend to no other gift, for I will grant him no other gift. So in the beginning, before Joseph really starts translating, he's got this gift of translating, and that's the only gift he's going to have. But now he's got a whole church he's trying to run off of this thing. He's got people trying to compete with him with seer stones. And so D&C 5, they changed. So the Book of Commandments was published in 1833. D&C was published 2 years later. And they changed a whole lot of verses from the original revelations in the Book of Commandments. So in D&C 5, verse 4, he says, and you have a gift to translate the plates, and this is the first gift that I bestowed upon you, and I have commanded you that you should pretend to no other gift until my purpose is fulfilled in this, for I will grant unto you no other gift until it is finished.
Okay, so it's kind of convenient that he was told that he had one specific gift, but then all of a sudden he has many gifts. I've talked a lot about Truman G. Madsen before. He was a historian that I used to really love. He did a whole, I'll call it episode, but would have been more like a talk or something about going through each of the spiritual gifts mentioned in the scriptures and showing how Joseph had all of them. From healing and the gift to be healed and the gift of speaking in tongues and all of them. So okay, let's see what else we have. Okay, this is interesting. I feel like many people know this, and I'm going to, for obvious reasons, I'm going to go over this very basic, very high level. If you want to know more, you could watch the LDS discussions episode with John, Delyn, and Mike about Masons and the temple. But for our purposes tonight, we should know that Joseph was initiated as a master mason 7 weeks before he introduced the temple ceremony stuff. So 7 weeks, that's already very suspicious, right? I will simply pull this slide from that episode that I just referenced. These are not temple things. These are publicly available Masonic handshakes. And so, if you see similarities, that's on you. But this is publicly available as well as this terminology. I'm not going to dwell on it a lot, but it's like, what is that? The past grip of a fellow craft. Has it a name? It has. Will you give it to me? Etc. All of this, once again, is from the Masonic ceremony, publicly available dialogue. And if you happen to see some similarities there, then you would agree that this should be in this episode of It Just So Happened or How Convenient.
So those were revealed in a expose by a gentleman in like the 1820s, and I'm spacing it out. His name is Captain something or other. Captain Harris. Yeah. And he wrote this big book, and then he's murdered. His body disappears. Thinks he was killed because he revealed the Masonic secrets. And the guy who was jailed for his disappearance happened to be in jail at the same time in the same place where Joseph Smith Sr. was in jail for not paying one of his debts. So he was in jail at the same time as a person who killed the revealer of those secrets. And also Joseph ended up marrying that man's widow, the Captain Harris's widow, as one of his polygamous wives. She ended up joining the church and marrying her down in Missouri, 1838.
Oh, wow.
So there's some interesting connections there with that one as well.
Ron, do you want to answer Janine here? What is the Book of Commandments?
The Book of Commandments was the original printing of the Revelations. It was being done in Missouri, but the printing press got destroyed. So they had printed a bunch of the pages, but they hadn't really bound any of the pages yet. But they were able to smuggle some of the pages out, and they're able to make like maybe 12 or 20 copies of the Book of Commandments. So you'll see a couple of them in church archives. I think Wilford Woodruff got one. I think Princeton or Yale or one of those fancy colleges has another copy. But there's only like a dozen or so copies of the Book of Commandments. But that was their first attempt at printing the Revelations, and then they did again in 1838 or 1835 and changed a bunch of them.
Okay. All right. So thanks for that, Ron, giving us a master class on the Book of Commandments. All right. We just have a few more. I will once again, just in case someone feels like we've left out something very, very important. Hey, Gene. I'll post that link. And again, this would be if you feel like there's a something you would want to bring up in a couple minutes regarding convenient revelations or things like that. But we do have a few more. Ron, why don't you take us through this one?
So this is a story where their apostles are off in England. They're doing their missionary work, and they come across somebody who's got some magical items, including a couple of seer stones and some grimoires. So this is the story that I found in a book called The Power of Godliness, Mormon Liturgy and Cosmology. Fascinating book. In 1841, Alfred Cordon, the ecclesiastical leader of Staffordshire, a county located just southeast of Preston, held a council with apostles Wilford Woodruff and George Smith to consider the case of Mormon William Mountford, who had been brought in for using magic and employing several glasses, or crystals, as he called them. They were about the size of a goose egg, made flat at each end. They had books which had been handed down for many generations. Mace recorded details of the precise rituals that the members performed, including invoking the name of a particular spirit to show a desired vision, commonly of family or future spouses. The procedure Mountford apparently used follows those described in two occult classics, Reginald Scott's Discovery of Witchcraft and Francis Barrett's The Magus. The members of the council, who were certainly familiar with Joseph Smith's revelations condemning sorcerers, unanimously agreed that no such magic work be allowed in the church. Mountford apparently gave the stones and grimoires to the council. George Smith destroyed the books, but put the stones in the bottom of his trunk and brought them to Nauvoo. He gave them to Joseph Smith the prophet, who pronounced them to be a Urim and Thummim, as good as ever was upon the earth, but he said they have been consecrated to devils. So, and he was calling everything Urim and Thummims at this time. So they didn't start calling the seer stones that they used for translation Urim and Thummim until 1832. So before that, they were just seer stones and glasses. Also, we talked about Lumen Walters before. He was a person who had gone to England, studied with the clergy there, and became a magician. So he's starting to be, he's learning all the rituals and secret magic and grimoires being passed around. And he's collecting all of these. When he comes back, he's learning necromancy, which is what treasure digging is, because you're communicating and controlling spirits to find and get the treasure. So Lumen Walters is really knowledgeable on all of this. So he has, for sure, a copy of the Magus and probably some other magic spells. And if you go back to that slide, this is a parchment up top that was used, I think, I forgot which. Joseph Smith had like 3 magical parchments. There was like the Holiness of the Lord, the Jehovah parchment, and I've forgotten the name of this one. But this one is written right out of the Magus. And Joseph Smith is using this parchment for, I think, protection. The second one, the medallion, this is his Jupiter talisman. This is also designed just out of the Magus. So Joseph is using these magical artifacts developed from the Magus that these other people destroyed because they were sorcery and were not to be used in the church. But apparently Joseph Smith gets to use these magical parchments and talismans.
Yeah. Big Chris says not to be confused with Onondagas. So that's a reference to
Zelf.
Yeah. So the story with Zelf, I was actually going to put that in our slides, but the story with Zelf is you'll have to help me, Ron. But this is like the Mormon battalion, right? They're like hiking along. They're probably all downtrodden and getting all hot and whatever. So I think Joseph was trying to lift the spirits. And anyways, they come across some bones, and they're like, "Hey, Joseph, what do you think?" Or whatever. Maybe they dug it up, whatever, in a mountain. And then Joseph was like, he's like, home or whatever. And he's like, "This is Zelf, the white Lamanite, who reigned during the reign of King Onondagas or Onondaga or something like that." And it just so happened that if you look up like the Native American tribes by region, and you look up in the New York north area, that would correspond. It would be like here where we live. It would be like the Cherokee Indians, and so this was just something of his geographical area, and it would have referred to the people of Onondagas or something like that. Did I get that about right, Ron?
I think so. It's pretty close. I think it was like a prophet Onondagas, and Zelf was, I think, known as a mighty warrior from the Rocky Mountains to the Atlantic Ocean type of thing.
Yeah.
So it gives you an idea of where the Book of Mormon location is. And so you have the Heartlander people that rely on this, like, hey, this is where we know certain things are happening. And then you have the Central American people who's like, yeah, but nothing else fits there. Even if all the prophets Joseph Smith was talking about stuff that happened there, it has to happen somewhere around here because this is where we'll find some other things that match this, but they don't. Nothing fits.
Big Chris says, so they were the principal ancestors of the American Indians. I wanted to go back real quick to the this whole idea about. So I've looked through the handbook, the bishop's handbook. Used to, you had one for the bishops and stake presidents, and then when it was blue, and then red for other people. Now everything's online. But anyways, there's a whole section about the occult, it calls it. And it basically says that we do not agree with, or we do not, we do not allow, or recommend, or whatever, members to do any of this stuff that Joseph was doing, right? It's like of course, we never knew that, but all of a sudden, witchcraft and all this other stuff, and treasure hunting and all of this stuff is bad, but it was definitely good for a while. So
if you learn about it, then you realize what Joseph Smith was actually doing, and then that's bad. So you can't look at it.
So going back, this the top thing here, you called that a parchment, is that right?
It's called a layman.
Okay.
Layman?
And I see like a star type thing there, right?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know. So I'm going to tell a quick little story, and then we'll move on. So on my mission, we're in there's a guy who was light years ahead, like mentally, with spiritual things. Like, he struggled with some common sense and like communicating things a little bit, but mentally light years ahead of the rest of us. Matter of fact, he would start speaking in, I don't know if he'll ever see this, but he would start praying in Spanish, which we were learning, but he would just start making it up. He thought he was so smart that he could just make up words and they would magically be right. But anyways, we get into the celestial room, and his dad apparently was a stake president or higher. We get into the celestial room, and he says, "Everyone come here. Everybody come here." We're like, "What's he doing?" We're like, "I don't know." He's like, "Everybody gather around." And he pulls out a piece of paper from his shirt pocket, and he pulls out a pen, and he takes it, and he says, "If you draw the Star of David," and he draws it, he says, and then all of a sudden, the lady come up, and he says, "Elder, you can't get out. You can't get papers out." And he says, "Yes, I can. My dad said I can." She said, "No, you can't, Elder. You can't get papers out in the celestial room." He said, "Yes, I can. My dad said I can." So I have no idea. I have still to this day, I have no idea what he was about to tell us. But that's as far as he got. He says, "If you take the Star of David," and he drew it out. So maybe you guys all know. I have no idea what he was about to tell us, but she shut it down. She shut it down. So anyways, just a little story there. All right, moving on. Do you know what this is, Ron?
That's a graham cracker box. I don't know what relevance it has to this.
Okay, so graham crackers. Does anybody know how graham crackers relate back into Mormonism? So this was interesting. I found this on the Mormon Stories site under Truth Claims, and this is regarding the temperance movement and with the Word of Wisdom. So anyways, it says the Kirtland chapter of Temperance Society formed in 1830, shortly before Mormons arrived from New York. Presbyterian Sylvester Graham conducted a speaking tour for almost 15 years, extolling the virtues of abstaining from alcohol, smoking, tea, coffee, and eating a diet mainly of grains, local fruits, and vegetables. Meat was expressly forbidden. He was popular and well known in the late 1920s till the 1820s till 1840s, and he also invented the graham cracker. So That's where that connection was. But going on, February 26, 1833. Remember that date. February 26 of 1833 was National Day of Temperance. And so it goes on to talk about, basically, this was a hot topic of the day. And then it goes on to talk about how Emma was cleaning up, that whole thing. And she was like, it would be a good thing if a revelation could be had declaring the use of tobacco as a sin. And so, anyways, on February 27th, so the next day after the National Day of Temperance, Joseph received a revelation exactly, very, very, very similar to this Graham cracker guy. What was his name? Sylvester Graham, something that he had been preaching locally for quite a while. And I just thought, oh, how convenient that this revelation just so closely mirrored, the common popular thing of the day.
Yep.
Did you know all that stuff, Ron? I just recently found all that out.
I knew the temperance movement, and I've got some of their books that I've in my library from that time. So I know they thought the hot drinks were going to be cooking people from the insides, going to be cooking your organs. So people were not drinking hot soup. No, hot drinks was specifically for things for temperature related for your body.
All right, I think we have just a couple more here, Ron. How about this?
This is another one of my early historical cartoons. Joseph receives a revelation to care for Miranda Hyde. So Orson Hyde is an apostle. He's her husband. He is off in Jerusalem dedicating the Holy Land for the return of the Israelites. And while he's there, he gives this prayer on the mountain that he wishes that his family is going to be well taken care of. And then a couple of weeks later, Joseph gets this revelation that he is supposed to make sure that their family is taken care of. And this is told as a very faith-promoting story. It's like just weeks after Orson gets this makes this prayer, Joseph gets this revelation. And isn't it so great? So this is the revelation given December 2nd, 1841. Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, my servant Joseph, that inasmuch as you have called upon me to know my will concerning my handmaid Nancy Miranda Hyde, behold, it is my will that she should have a better place prepared for her than that in which she now lives, in order that her life may be spared unto her. Therefore go and say unto my servant Ebenezer Robinson, and to my handmaid his wife, let them open their doors and take her and her children into their house, and take care of them faithfully and kindly until my servant Orson Hyde returns from his mission, or until some other provision can be made for her welfare and safety. Let them do these things and spare not, and I the Lord will bless them and heal them, if they do not do it grudgingly, saith the Lord, and she shall be a blessing unto them. And let my handmaid Nancy Miranda Hyde hearken unto the counsel of my servant Joseph in all things whatsoever he shall teach unto her. And it shall be a blessing upon her and upon her children after her, unto her justification, saith the Lord.
Did he marry her, Ron?
In the Joseph Smith papers, Nancy Miranda gives a later recollection that before he gave this revelation to her, he'd been telling her about plural marriage. So now he gets this revelation to get her out of this kind of a crappy condition she was living in, and then living with the Robinsons. And also tells her that she has to listen to the things that he's going to teach her, which is kind of sus when he's teaching about polygamy. So let's go to the next slide. So the Robinsons are also doing the times and seasons, and they live in the same house where they've got the printing press. And so just the next month, so the other was in December, here we are in January, a new revelation to the 12 concerning the times and seasons comes to Joseph Smith. Verily, thus saith the Lord unto you, my servant Joseph, go and say to the 12 that it is my will to have them take in hand the editorial department of the times and seasons, according to that manifestation, which shall be given unto them by the power of my Holy Spirit in the midst of their council, saith the Lord. Amen. So over the next week or two, they make the deal with Ebenezer Robinson. They buy the whole house and the press, and as soon as that deal is done, they kick him out of the house. But just he and his wife and family, they leave Miranda in the shop. And then Joseph says, "Oh, I need to take over as editor of the Times and Seasons." So this shop is just a couple houses down from where Joseph lives. So he just has to now walk across the street, kind of just a couple of houses down, maybe a block, and now he's hanging out in the press with the woman he's trying to convince to marry him. And they have a bunch of dinners there. He brings his friends over there. They'll have like the apostles will all at dinner there with Miranda there, and they hang out. And eventually, over the next couple of weeks, she finally agrees to marry him. And Joseph stays on as editor of the Times and Seasons until within like a few weeks of when Orson Hyde comes back from his mission. And Nancy's not going to be there. And so he's like, I'm done with this. I'll give this to John Taylor to be the editor. So there's just an awful lot of convenient revelations and timing all right there.
Wow.
And that nice faith promoting story of him getting this revelation to take care of Miranda just weeks after Orson gives that prayer is a little bit less faith promoting when you know all the rest of the story.
That is the point. Man, that is the thing that, God, I can't believe how they try to make so many stories faith promoting from the, what was it, the butter thing, the butter story of taking the skim off, that whole thing, and turns out that was a crap show. I mean, all of these stories, when you learn the rest of the story, it's like, oh, how convenient, or whatever.
And I have like the only decent book that's a biography of Orson Hyde, and it tells the story just the faithful promoting ways. Like here he is giving the prayer and he's praying for his family, and then his wife is taken care of with this very faith promoting prophecy or revelation that Joseph gives, and there's his family's taken care of. And then it skips anything about Joseph marrying her. In the next chapter, it talks about how Joseph is helping, tells him about polygamy and helps him find 2 wives. So apparently he comes back and finds out, and as payment, Joseph gets him 2 more wives to ease the pressure of having his wife borrowed while he was on his mission.
Okay. Well, we have one more slide, and just one last time in case someone feels like we've left out something that is just so convenient and so, it just so happened. You can come on in the studio and tell us about it. So this last slide, once again, I stole it from John and Mike with their LDS discussions, but I thought it was pretty interesting. It just so happened that many names in the Book of Mormon matched Charles Anthon's Dictionary of Ancient Names, which was published in 1827. So 3 years before the Book of Mormon. And if we just looked there, of course, Charles Anthon, that's the guy that they were trying to get, the whole I can't read a sealed book stuff, right, Ron?
Yeah. Yep.
And so he was a know-it-all. He was a guy that everyone respected. And so this was some names. He had a dictionary of ancient names. He had Morini. Much like Moroni, he had Gadiantum, Of course, that's so much like Gadianton. You can see the rest there: Zamora, Nepheritis, or whatever, Egyptus.
Nephrites.
There you go. Corianthium. I mean, every one of these obviously has so much similarities to Book of Mormon names. So I just thought that was super convenient and very strange how that just so happened to be the case. So that is pretty much everything we had. Looking at it now, I don't know how people that know this stuff, and there's a lot of this stuff that I just simply didn't know as a TBM.
Uh-huh.
But looking at it now, I don't know how people just write all that off. And beginning with the very first slide, like, oh, so Joseph was actually, and his dad was actually in the Bible, and they were taken out. And the rest of this stuff just adds to it. I don't know. What do you think, Ron?
It seems like he's borrowing a lot of stuff from everything around him and combining it all into his own fairy tales.
And I don't have a problem with that if we were just honest. If we just said, this is what Joseph did, it's quite obvious now. I would respect that. And I would say, well, he did a pretty cool job, right? Because even taking all of this stuff in and producing the Book of Mormon and stuff, that's still an accomplishment, And so it's time to just be honest. Just be honest and say, yep, he obviously did this. There's so much that matches right up with so many other things contemporary of his time. So anyways, this was what some of our thoughts on how many of the things in our church history are very convenient, that they're kind of sus, as we talked about, and how it's just neat that it just so happened. Let's see, Mike's adding something. I'll add that Joseph Smith added portions to Isaiah in the JST that, of course, do not match the original text for Isaiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Okay, well, is that showing that the Dead Sea Scrolls are wrong, or is that showing that it's obviously, I guess that's convenient that that they're not the same. You would think they would have been the same, but I guess apologists would say, well, this is Joseph produced the true version or whatever.
They're no longer really calling it a translation back from. I think Brad Wilcox called it an inspired commentary or something like that.
Right.
So they're kind of walking back this whole thing that he's restoring it to what it was originally written. Because as we go back and find these older records, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, these versions that Joseph is coming up with do not match that, but they do match the Clark's commentary. So,
yeah. All right. Well, we've kept you guys long enough. Want to thank everyone for chiming in the chats. Thank Ron for bringing so much interesting content here tonight, and for always being willing at the drop of a hat to jump on here with me. I know that I learn way more from you than you do of me. I'm just a simpleton, but I know the things that I were taught, and I know the things that I did teach, and just so many of them now I realize that they were just so convenient that it was that way. And so that's kind of.
Zelig was asking what Hyde did when he found out what happened to his wife when he was gone. I don't know what happened there. I haven't found a record explaining his reaction. We have Orson Pratt's reaction when he came back from his mission, and he goes off in the woods and people are afraid that he's about to kill himself. He kind of separates himself from the church for 6 months before finally coming back. So Orson Pratt didn't do very well. Orson Hyde seemed to have handled it better.
Okay. All right. Well, I do have something planned for tomorrow. I'll wait and tell you about it tomorrow. But Ron, I want to thank you once again for joining me and wish you a great night. And with all this, I'm going to hit play on my music. Say good night, everyone.